So, we're at the fourth film now. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, when it comes to Star Wars, it's easy to compartmentalize the films. You have the original trilogy, you have the prequel trilogy, and you have the sequel trilogy. When it comes to the Harry Potter movies, I kind of compartmentalize it into two halves. Years 1 through 4, and then 5, 6, 7. Those are like the two halves in my head. And Goblet of Fire, to me, is kind of like that transitional movie. It has a lot of the elements of the first 3 Harry Potter movies, but it's kind of the segue movie into the more darker tone, and it starts to kind of talk about the plot for the next few Harry Potter movies, because the next few Harry Potter movies are all kind of in line when it comes to the plot. Now, in my previous video, I said that Prisoner of Azkaban is technically, objectively, the best Harry Potter movie. As far as my personal taste, I think Goblet of Fire is the best one. Come on, guys. Now, that might change. I haven't seen 5, 6, 7, and 7 Part 2 yet. But when I watched these when I was younger, I thought that the fourth one was the best. And I rewatched it now and I understood why I love that movie so much. This movie follows Harry Potter as he goes to Hogwarts yet again for another year. And there's this Triwizard Tournament going on. The Triwizard Tournament is basically a series of challenges that students face. Well, guess what? Someone put Harry Potter's name as a volunteer, and now he has to perform some of these tasks in the Triwizard Tournament, putting his life on the line and putting him face to face with he who shall not be named. Right off the bat, I was unaware of the director of this movie. This is no longer Cuarón directing. Cuarón was only there for that one movie. Neither is it Chris Columbus, who directed 1 and 2. Now it's a guy by the name of Mike Newell. And you guys might be wondering, who's Mike Newell? Well, I had to look him up too because I wasn't too familiar with his work as well. But he directed 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and he directed Donnie Brasco. I haven't seen 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and in all honesty, I know Donnie Brasco is considered a gangster classic. I was never a fan of Donnie Brasco. I thought it was too slow and, yeah, too boring. However, he really brings it to this movie. Now, the movie opens, and this movie is very differently shot, in my opinion. I talked about Cuarón having his style, and he definitely brings a different style, this director. It has a more naturalistic feel to it. There's some scenes where the camera's a little shaky, and you're all up close in front of these characters and stuff. I feel like he definitely brings a different visual style to this movie, and that's kind of something I wish the next few Harry Potters did that they didn't do. The first 4 Harry Potter movies all had distinct voices to them, even though the Chamber of Secrets was directed by the same guy as the first Harry Potter movie. But then in 5, 6, 7 Part 1 and 7 Part 2, they get all the same director, and I get it because it's one consistent through line of stories. I just wish that they had different directors along the way, just to bring their own splash of flavor to the film. Which is why I like Goblet of Fire. It's the last one of those movies where they brought in a new director and said, yo, kind of do what you want here. The reason why I really like this movie is because when I look at the first Harry Potter movie, I see that as you going into school or high school or whatever you call it in America when you're 12. Then Chamber of Secrets, it's like when you're 13. Then Prisoner of Azkaban is like the 14, and you kind of feel that. And this one is really about being a like 14, 15-year-old. It's really about being a teenager, just by the way these characters look. All the characters here, Ron, Neville Longbottom, whatever his name is, Harry Potter, they all have shaggy hair. I remember being in my teens. Being in my teens was a very awkward time in my life. It's this awkward period where hair starts sprouting out of different places. I remember when I was a teen, my nose grew quicker than my face and my head, so I had this really long hook nose and this really small head and this really scrawny body. Things kind of just grow awkwardly, and you talk to girls and your voice is squeaking, you're like, hi, do you want to go to the dance with me? It's just a very awkward period, that age, and I feel like this movie captures that essence perfectly. From the beginning, where Ron's friends are making fun of Ron, saying that he has a crush on Victor Crumb. They start doing gay jokes at him, which I remember when I was in high school and people would be like, ha, gay! All the way to the dance scene, the scene where there's the ballroom dance. And I feel like that's the scene that tends to lose people. Because we were watching this Harry Potter movie, and there's dragons, and there's underwater battles, and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, the movie comes to a grinding halt just to give you this ballroom dance sequence. And it's this very awkward 30 minutes that's just injected in the film. That's one of the things in this movie. You're either gonna roll with it, or it's gonna lose you completely. I, for one, rolled with it. I really liked the mix of being in high school mixed with the fantasy element of J.K. Rowling's world, and I feel like that this movie does it more so than any of the other Harry Potter movies. When they're at the dance, Harry Potter stutters on his words. People make fun of Ron for having his mother's clothes and stuff like that. It's really relatable shit. And I remember when I was in high school and shit like that would happen to me, and I watched this movie, I'm like, this is fucking hilarious. It's basically my high school years, but in a wizard world. When I was in high school, I'd go up to girls and ask them out, and be like, wanna go out with me? And I'd be all awkward and shit. There's that part where Harry Potter and Ron are just sitting in the ballroom as everyone else is dancing, and they're just like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I just want to get the fuck out of here. And I remember I was that kid. Whenever there'd be a school dance and everyone would be dancing, I would be off on the sidelines just questioning my existence, and I'm like, why am I not adequate enough for being here? That's why I find the movie relatable. There's a scene where Ron is going out with the Indian girl for the dance. He's dancing with the Indian girl, and the Indian girl just asks Ron, are you gonna dance with me or what? And Ron just turns and says, no. That right there, those two lines of dialogue represent my high school career more accurately than most movies I've seen. And this isn't even supposed to be a teen drama. This is supposed to be a fantasy film. But that's what I like. I feel like the director, Mike Newell, really does the teenage stuff to a T in this movie. It's perfect. Also in that dance scene is Hagrid. He's got a little subplot that kind of gets lost throughout the movie, which I thought was unfortunate. I would have wished that he had a scene at the end to wrap up his subplot. But he's hitting on the principal of one of the neighboring schools, and she's this tall 7-foot lady, and Hagrid's in love with her. Anyway, in that dance sequence, he's dancing with her, and my boy Hagrid, he doesn't fuck around, man. He goes downtown, he goes to get a little grab ass. My man, Hagrid is a beast, man. No questions asked. One move, goes for the grab ass. He's a G. That's not to say this is a perfect movie. I think the teenage drama is done perfectly. I think the fantasy works really well in this movie, as it does with the previous 3 movies. There are a few things I can nitpick about that I don't really like as much. First being Dumbledore again. I don't like this guy's performance compared to the previous performance. Here more so than Prisoner of Azkaban. I think his performance is very violent. There's a scene where he goes to Harry and he grabs Harry like this and he's like,
Harry, you put your name in that goblet of fire.
No, sir.
You asked one of the oldest students to do it for you?
No, sir.
That to me is not Dumbledore. Dumbledore would never grab Harry like that. He's a more commanding presence than that. He doesn't need to get physical and grab someone. That's why I don't like this new performance of Dumbledore as much as the previous. I get it, they had to recast him. And I wonder how much of it is the actor himself and how much is the direction of the movie. People saying, listen, in the later Harry Potter movies, Dumbledore is going to have to become more physical, so therefore you need to play it more viscerally. That could be the problem at hand as well. It just doesn't work in this movie for me. I really love Mad-Eye Moody, and I think Professor Lupin is my favorite Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, but I think Mad-Eye Moody works in this movie as well. My dad always says, if you don't like pharmacy and you don't like film, You can always fall back on teaching. And if I did fall back on teaching and start teaching high school, I'd be Mad-Eye Moody. Just walking around, scaring the kids, fucking bullying the kids, turning them into ferrets and tossing them around, going in my corner and drinking my booze. That's what it'd be like if I were a high school teacher. One problem I have with the movie is that we don't really know a lot about Cedric Diggory. We're introduced to this character, and I wish he was along for the ride for the previous 3 movies. Maybe if he was just kind of like a background character in the first 3 movies, because when his death happened, I didn't really feel anything. I didn't feel like he was very attached to Harry. I get why Harry would be crying over his dead body, because Voldemort killed him before his eyes, but I wish there was just a bit more of a connection between Cedric Diggory and Harry Potter, and we got to know a bit more about his character, because we know he's a loyal guy, but that's about all we know about Cedric Diggory. And he's played by the sexy Robert Pattinson, ladies and gentlemen. That guy was getting some, you know? Between this and the Twilight movies, girls must have been all up in his DMs, texting him left and right. The ending drama does work, and when you're first introduced to Voldemort, that's a very creepy scene, how he's just like a fetus that's just like crawling around, and Peter Pettigrew carries him and puts him in the potion, and then he like, it kind of reminded me of Neo in the Matrix, how Neo kind of went through that whole process of being a fetus again and stuff like that. That was kind of similar with Voldemort, and we're first introduced to Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort in this movie. He will be the Voldemort for the next few movies, which is why I call this a more transitional Harry Potter movie. He's very good as Voldemort. As little as he was in this movie, he's a little hammy, but he gives it his all, and I can respect that. Overall, the story of Prisoner of Azkaban is better than the story in Goblet of Fire. I don't think anyone's arguing that. The time travel element, the whole Sirius Black thing, the whole thing with the werewolves, I think that all played out beautifully in the previous Harry Potter movie. Which is why I think, objectively, the previous Harry Potter movie is the better film. Now, as far as personal preference, the mixing of the fantasy element with the teen drama, and the fact that both are done so perfectly, unlike most movies of this genre. When you look at teen dramas mixed with fantasy, all what comes to mind is like shit like, I don't know, Percy Jackson, or that Aragorn movie. It's really hard to do it well, because teen dramas alone are very hard to do. It's hard to make you sympathize with teenagers, because most teenagers are dumb. They're full of acne, they sit in their own stench, and they play video games. This movie takes teenage dramas, does it perfectly, and then takes fantasy and does it perfectly, and meshes them together fairly well. I think this is the best Harry Potter movie in my opinion. Fuck the haters. I know people don't think this one's too good. I don't know. Do people think The Goblet of Fire is good? I know people love Prisoner of Azkaban, and I know people love 7 Part 2. I don't know. I don't hear people talking about Goblet of Fire all that much. Anyway, I think it slaps. It gets my seal of approval. Best Harry Potter movie.
Dark and difficult times lie ahead, Harry. Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy.